Hello, everybody, and welcome. We are live, and we've got a great show. Hi to you, Ray Abbott. Hi to Nicola. Dear people, glad to see you again. People are coming in from all over the world, which is great. To Helen Courtney Hinch. So people are coming in, which is great. We've got a fabulous subject that we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about managing mobility across cultures. That is such an important subject. We're going to be talking about how you manage a program when you're moving people into very different cultures and indeed into very similar cultures. We're going to be talking about what makes an assignment work, what makes an assignment fail, what makes a repatriation work, what makes a repatriation fail. So we've got a great subject. Now, you know how it works, everybody. Please join in the conversation, write in the comments box. I can see some of our regulars are already, but we'd love to know who's out there in LinkedIn world, where you are in the world, what your comments are. Tell us everything. Tell us your thoughts as we go through today, because as I said, we've got a great show for you coming up over the next 60 minutes. And then next week, we've got another great tech show for you. We're going to be talking about how you build a mobility technology strategy, because some companies want to have a very sophisticated technology platform. Others want maybe something more simple. We're going to be talking about how you build a technology strategy that is right for your organization. So that's next week. But this week, as I said, we're going to be talking about how you manage mobility across cultures. Now, by the way, as I think everybody knows, you can get CPE credits. This is the only show out there, I think, that is regular every week that gives you your CPE credits, and whether you want them from SHRM, from HRCI, or indeed from ERC, you can get your credits. And I'll put the credits up here. So there they are. They're the credits. Your GMS and CRP credits are there, courtesy of our good friends at ERC, and then courtesy of our good friends at Rocket Mortgage, we've also got the credits for SHRM and for HRCI. I'll leave that up for there for the moment. If you want to make sure you get the codes, then just screenshot this page now as those numbers are going along. Or if you want, you can just get your camera out, your phone out, and just take a quick snap of that. Or indeed, if you're really quick, you can just write it down the old-fashioned way with pen and paper. But I'll leave that up for a second so you can see what the codes are. But the other thing we like to do every week, if we like to give you a little bit of breaking news, what has been going on in the wonderful world of global mobility. So without further ado, let's have a look. What's been going on? What's been happening? Who's been promoted? Who's moved job? What's all the latest news in the wonderful world that we all inhabit, that world of global mobility? So there we have it, all the news from around our industry over the last 7 days. Many congratulations to everybody who has been promoted or has moved job. I'd like to give a particular shout out to everybody who's just been appointed to the board of directors of Worldwide ERC. I know we've got the ERC conference coming up in just a few weeks' time, and Beneva will be there, and hopefully we'll get to meet many of you there. But congratulations to everybody who's just been appointed to the ERC board of directors, and also a big congratulations and shout out, I think, on the entire behalf of the entire profession to Austin Fraggerman, who's announced that he is stepping down as chairman, becoming chairman emeritus of Fraggerman after, I think, I'm not sure precisely, but it's well over 50 years that he has been leading that firm, maybe closer to 60. But Austin Fraggerman, a true legend of our profession, and handing over to two great people in Lance Kaplan and Enrique Gonzalez to lead Fraggerman, which of course brings me on to the subject of immigration. And as ever, we have with us today Julie Onslow Cole to give us her immigration update. Julia, hi. Hi. And I see big changes afoot at Fraggerman.
Yes, it's terribly exciting. Yeah, everyone's so happy, and obviously, you know, it's great that Austin's still going to be there for a long while, you know, in his new position. Yes, it's really great.
Okay, and Julia, where in the world are you today, and what are you going to be talking to us about?
So I'm currently in Dubai, and I'm going to be talking about immigration changes in the UAE, but particularly Dubai. And then at the weekend, I'm going to Saudi, and next week, I'm just going to talk about Saudi Arabia.
Okay, so tell us about the UAE.
Okay, so just wanted to give a big thank you to Martin Kubrick to really help me with this update. But yesterday, we had a conference with Sahir Ahmed, and she's the Executive Vice President of the Department for Economy and Tourism. And she was talking about the very exciting changes that are coming into force on Monday, so Monday, the 3rd of October. And we did actually cover this in Benevo. We did talk about the legal changes, but this is the implementation. And there might be a little bit of a delay. It's meant to be on Monday, but there might be some, so it might be staged, really, the implementation. So the three key things is that there's a complete reclassification of all the visa categories in the UAE. Everything's being tidied up. The second is the introduction of a green visa that is really going to affect companies in the UAE because it's an individual visa, and we'll just cover that. And the third thing is there's some amendments to the golden visa to make it a bit easier. So on the reclassification, there's going to be some really good new categories like a job seeker visa and a business exploration visa. So these are really good visas. So if you've got people coming to the UAE and they're looking for jobs, or they're actually exploring business opportunities, there's two new visa categories for them. So that's really good news. Now, the second thing, which is causing a lot of interest amongst individuals and also a lot of interest amongst companies, is the green visa. Now, we think that's primarily to retain talent in the UAE because it's you've got to have a valid employment contract and a work permit. So it suggests it's really for retaining talent more than people coming in as an entry permit. But the salary levels are quite low. So it's 15,000 UAE dirhams, which is about $4,200 dollars. I won't say what that is in sterling. I'm going to leave that depressing fact.
About sterling, the better at the moment.
Yes, that's going to be to Pat. But it's actually a very low level, and in order to qualify for this green visa, you've got to come from one of the skilled categories as per the Ministry of Labour Occupational Classification Scheme. So effectively, you've got to have a bachelor degree. But the big thing about it, it's self-sponsored. And this is one of the themes that we're seeing globally. So when we're looking at different countries, we're seeing a lot of countries are moving away from employers sponsoring to self-sponsored. And this green visa does come in three types. So there's the highly skilled worker, which we've just been talking about. And there's also somewhere for freelance and another category for investor. but employers will be interested in it, and individuals under the highly skilled category. And with that low salary, it's very accessible. And we've had lots of people ask. And for the benefit for employers, it means that individuals are self-sponsored. So that means that, you know, a lot of the rigor around compliance is lessened for employers. But of course, the other side of it is those individuals will have a lot more mobility. But also another upside for employers is that it's going to cost less, because it's a 5-year visa, which is a long visa. And currently the other option is a 2-year employment pass. So that's a good thing. So we don't really know exactly how it's going to pan out, but it's a very, very big change. And I think, you know, overall, it's going to be very beneficial for individuals and companies. And finally, I just wanted to say about the golden visa. There's been a staggering 65,000 successful applications since it was brought in 2019. 65,000, that's huge when you think that's just Dubai. And also that was a period of COVID. So the rules have actually been lessened for that. So we're expecting a huge influx of people with the golden visa. So that's it.
So thank you so much for that, Julie. And I know you're in Saudi next week, so you're going to be joining us live from Riyadh and giving us a Saudi update next week. So all that now remains, everybody, is to hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button. Let's see a really big thank you lighting up the screen for Julie Onslow-Cole. And let's move on to our regular tax update with the legend that is Pat Jurgens. Hey, Pat, how are you?
Hi, Brian.
How are you doing, sir?
Doing well.
Okay, and I believe you're going to be talking about the budget that dare not speak its name, the mini budget that wasn't so mini in the UK.
The mini that was actually a maxi, perhaps. But yes, I wasn't even planning to talk about tax updates from the UK today, except based on what happened on Friday when the new chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng, announced a new growth plan, and tax cuts dominate this plan. So we won't have time to go through all the proposals in detail, but I at least want to try to give some highlights that will be of interest to global mobility. So first, the national insurance contributions that were increased in April, they'll be reversed. So that's a 1.25% decrease in the current rates that have come into effect. And that'll apply for both employer and employee contributions. And, mobility managers will need to be thinking through how they can work with their payroll teams to get these payroll changes implemented in time. The reduction in the national insurance rates will be effective as of November 6th of this year. So, additionally, there'll be some blended rates that will apply to certain benefits in kind. And this will apply to England as well as Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales. And so that'll be something that everyone that's working within the UK will need to be considering. And moving on to the thing that caught most interest from people that were watching the speech last Friday, tax cuts announced. The first and foremost was something that was expected, which is that there was a planned increase in the corporate tax rate for beginning next year. That's been canceled. So technically not a tax cut, but effectively when you are canceling that increase, that is essentially a tax cut. And then on the personal side, there'll be a small reduction for lower incomes. The basic rate decreased from 20% to 19%. That saves you £377 a year. Not that significant, But more importantly, the top marginal rates will be reduced from 45% to 40%, and that's on taxable incomes over 150,000. So that's the one that has caught a lot of people by surprise, because that wasn't expected until we heard the speech on Friday. You know, I heard one commentator say that there's less than 700,000 taxpayers that make more than 150,000 pounds. Does that sound about right?
That does, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so those are the folks that are going to be benefiting from the lion's share of the tax proposals impacting individuals. And, you know, those tax rate cuts will apply, contrary to the national insurance reductions, only in England and Northern Ireland, technically. We would expect that Wales, being a devolved locality, will probably adopt the same rates they have in the past. Scotland, somewhat in a pickle. They had decided previously, when they devolved, to go with their own tax rate schedule and using a 46% top marginal rate. They'll be under pressure to try to bring that closer to the new 40%, assuming the growth plan is implemented as described. There are some other proposals that would be of interest to global mobility. There's it goes by the acronym IR35. It's where workers are providing services through an intermediary personal services company, and there were special rules that were being put in place. Those are being repealed. So that effectively means that people that are working through these intermediaries will again be responsible for determining their employment status and running PAYE requirements, et cetera. One feature of the growth plan that is targeting incentives are so-called investment zones. So they're identifying 38 localities initially that will have targeted financial and tax incentives that will promote growth. The one that caught my eye that was an incentive was that employer contributions to national insurance for salaries on new employees working in these zones will be waived. But you have to, the requirement is that they're working in this zone for 60% of the time. So that'll be interesting to think through on hybrid workers and remote workers, how you would apply that rule. I suppose we'll get some guidance from the revenue on that. But that will be an interesting one to follow. So tax rates are going down supposedly from 45 to 40. Now's a great time to be thinking about some tax planning, try to defer income into a future period with lower tax rates. That might be something that'll be of interest as you're planning for bonuses and the like. But will it happen? This all has to be rolled up into the Finance Act, which you probably know better than me, Brian. How does that work? I think they would typically pass that in early 2023. Do you think it'll happen?
Well, let me come in. I mean, this budget, technically it wasn't a budget, but it is a budget, has gone down incredibly badly with the market and indeed with most of the media. It crashed the pound quite dramatically from about 112 to the dollar to at one point it hit 103 to dollar, and people are talking about it reaching parity, currently trading I think about 106 or 107, so badly that the IMF has actually even issued a letter basically criticizing this budget. It's certainly the only budget in my lifetime where there wasn't a single revenue raising measure in it at all. Everything was a tax giveaway. And the question, of course, is the tax giveaways look great, but how do they get funded? And there's nothing in there about the funding of them.
They'll have to borrow.
And exactly. And whilst I say they look great, politically, it is not a good look to cut the top rate of tax to the top 1% of the population when everybody else is suffering a huge cost of living crisis and are seeing their interest rates and their mortgages going up. So politically, it has been a disaster for the government.
Well, we can point to history on this, Brian. I mean, the United States has tried this. There was the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act back when Trump was in office. Again, top tax cuts for higher incomes. It didn't really produce the growth that they had hoped for. So the trickle down is theory is somewhat in question at the moment, I think. So
yeah, I'm not a fan of trickle down economics. My view, what I learned when I studied economics, is if you want people to spend money, you give it to the poor, because they're more likely to spend money. If you give it to the rich, they're more likely to save it.
Absolutely.
It's called the marginal propensity to consume in economic theory. But anyway, we need to move on from this. I mean, you asked me the question, is it likely to happen? Now, the way UK politics works is if a government doesn't get its budget through, then typically the government falls. So I think they are in a very, very dangerous place at the moment. Clearly, right. Another change of prime minister, having only just changed this one within the last few weeks, is pretty much unheard of.
I heard that the Labour Party was leading in the polls as well.
Oh, massively, by I think 27 points. Anyway, we might come back to this and the whole cost of living crisis and global economics in a separate show. Now what we need to do is to move on to our next segment. And I'm going to bring Tally onto the show. But before I do, I just want to share some really exciting news. And that is that every year or twice a year, we do our top 100. Well, we are launching a new top 100 and we are launching it today. So if you like the top 100, you want to start nominating people, then we're launching it. And this year, the exciting thing is, well, our list is going to be the top 100 innovators in the global mobility industry. So if you know somebody who is an innovator, who's done something innovative, then this is your chance to recognize them. And I'll just play you the introductory video. We'll say goodbye to Pat and we'll bring Tally onto the show. So everybody, you know how it works. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button, and let's say goodbye for the week or so to Pat, and let's say hello to Tally. Tally, hi. So the top 100 is going live again. Tell us a bit about it.
So exciting. This is so exciting. Yes. And so we saw the video, and we actually brought some ideas in the nomination is open, and we're actually looking for creativity on this one. So what is an innovator? What does it mean to you, to everyone in the crowd? I don't know. We gave some ideas. We gave a list in the video, but you can come up with any justification that you may have, and you just have to write it in the box. So we're going to have that. Oh, sorry.
So it could be, for example, just go through some of them. Maybe someone's done something good on their sustainability policy in mobility, or technology in mobility, or maybe something
or diversity
in their program, or personally, or I mean. Yeah, I mean,
policy.
Sorry,
anything. So actually, if you can see here in the form on the side, we have a small box to write your justification. So you can just come up with any idea that comes to your mind that would make someone an innovator, and just write your justification in the box, and that's all you need to make them qualify. So this is the one thing that I wanted to share. And the other thing is I wanted to invite you to our demo sessions. We're going back to the smart cost estimates, which is the wonderful tool that Benevo developed with our technological capabilities and with the tax capabilities of the Alto partners. So in the demos, we'll show how to track SLAs and how to get live alerts and predictive analysis, and basically how to use the Benevo platform in order to plan ahead and to identify issues before they become escalations, how bad that could be. So the registration is currently open to corporate only. And of course, I will share the link in the comments.
Okay, so thank you so much for that, Tali. And we're now going to be talking about managing mobility across cultures. So everybody, you know how it works. We've got some great guests. We've got Kristen Dardani on the show. We've got Anna Monsalve on the show. And we've got Dean Foster on the show. 3 intercultural legends. So everybody, put your hand together, hit the applause button, hit the like button, hit the heart button, and let's meet Kristen, Anna, and Dean. Everybody, welcome. So where are you? Anna, let's start with you. Whereabouts in the world are you today?
Hello, Brian and everyone. I'm in Houston, Texas.
Okay, and Kristen, where are you?
I am in sunny Boston, Massachusetts.
Okay, and you just live just around the corner from Pat Jurgens, you were telling
me. In the same little town, yeah.
Okay, both in Melrose. And Dean, where are you today?
Hi, Brian. I'm in New York City, and I'm in the best part of New York City. I'm in Brooklyn, New York.
Okay, well, that could be controversial. We'll see what people in the audience say. Is Brooklyn the best part of New York City? Let us know. We'll see what the audience say. So we're going to start with you, Anna. So tell us a bit about yourself and your background.
Thank you, Brian. Well, my background is in oil and gas. I worked for BP for about 27 years, had the opportunity to be an expert myself in locations such as Angola and Azerbaijan. Then I transferred to the US. So been a little bit around the globe. And most recently, I joined Kearney, and that's where I am currently as Talent Mobility Senior Manager.
Okay, so Angola, Azerbaijan, and the USA.
Yes, and I am originally from Colombia.
Which is the toughest location?
Ooh, I would have to say that Angola could possibly give you some interesting challenges.
Okay, well, we'll come on to that in a moment. And Kristen, tell us about yourself. Now, Brainlabs is a company that people may or may not have heard of. So tell us a bit about your background and where you were before, and a bit about what Brainlabs does, and just about yourself too.
Yeah, so I've spent 30 years in the advertising industry. I joined Brainlabs earlier this year. Half of my career, I worked developing marketing for clients around the world. And for the second half of it, I've been in operations roles and primarily building and managing mobility programs. Brainlabs is a UK-based digital marketing agency that has analytics approach, kind of a test and learn approach to marketing. And as I said, I joined earlier this year. So we're getting our mobility programs underway as we grow pretty aggressively.
Okay, that's really exciting. And Dean, I would say probably someone that needs no introduction, a legend of the intercultural world, but I think that's a polite way of saying you've got a few years on you. But Dean, tell us a bit about your background and what you do.
I've been in global mobility, specifically in the space of intercultural training and consulting, for about 30 years, and I've been involved in supporting the industry with whatever kind of cultural information, cultural support, cultural counseling, cultural consulting is necessary in order to develop cultural competency in both individuals, that would be international assignees, as well as the organizations. And I've had the privilege and pleasure of working with many of you over all those years. And I just crossed my 100th country, actually, that I've actually worked in. So I've worked in over 100 countries around the world.
Wow.
Pleased to be here.
I think you've still got about 90 left, haven't you? So
yeah, only half done. Only half done.
So you're going to be a busy man. So Kristen, I'm going to start with you, because when I was putting the introduction to this out on LinkedIn, I sort of jokingly referred to Emily in Paris. And of course, you're in the advertising business. So, okay, so here's my question to you, Kristen. Emily in Paris, myth or reality? What's it like?
Very much a reality. The story I have about my Emily in Paris, I think, preceded the show. So maybe it's really based on this individual that I moved from New York actually to Paris a number of years ago. Do you want me to give you some details?
Yeah, I was just going to say, for anybody who hasn't seen the show, I'm rather sort of, this is obviously culturally sort of gauche of me, is that I haven't actually explained what the show is. It's a Netflix show about a US executive, I think from Chicago, who is sent on assignment to the newly acquired advertising subsidiary based in Paris. It's all about her journeys, and it's very silly, but it's great fun as a Netflix show. Advertisement over. Okay, yes, Kristen, tell us a bit about your real life Emily in Paris.
Yeah, so we, this was at a prior company, a big global advertising network, and we had won a luxury account that we were very excited to be working with, and they were based in Paris, and we needed to send the global account director to Paris. This person actually spoke fluent French. She was American, but spoke fluent French and had spent quite a bit of time in Paris previously. And based on that, declined to participate in intercultural training. And we didn't push the issue because she did speak French, married to a Frenchman, had lived there, in her past. And we thought, perfect fit. About a year into that engagement, we realized things weren't going well with the client and with internal teams. And so we pulled the leadership team together. This US national was the head of the whole account, but everyone else on our leadership team was Western European, and largely our clients were based in Latin America, the Middle East, and Asia Pacific. So that's where our teams were based. And after doing some work with that team, we realized that they were leading the client, leading the business, leading the internal teams in a very transactional way. Of course, those cultures I mentioned are all very relationship oriented. And equally, they were working in a style that's quite common for the cultures that they were from, a very flat sort of egalitarian style, working in cultures that have a much more vertical hierarchy, and in the case of our company, very matrixed as well. And, cluing in on that, we were able to provide training to the leadership team, and then ultimately to the whole team who we brought in to Paris for a workshop session, just so that people really understood themselves better, understood what was personality versus culture, and taught people about the cultures of the people they were working with, and then gave them tools so that they learned how to flex their style. And our orientation was, that we wanted to maintain the diversity. We very much believed, and I still believe, that the diversity is your strength, as is, any facet of diversity. Multiculturalism is, is important as well. And just teaching people how to flex their style and allowing people to kind of work in their home cultural norms. When you were looking for speed was very effective for this team. And when you were looking for innovation, to kind of bring people out of their comfort zone and allow that innovation to, to enrich the work that we were doing for clients was actually transformational for that business. And the global account director on the business went on to actually be the CEO of all of France for that company. And we were able to turn that account around, and they're still doing quite well. So that's my real Emily in Paris story, all thanks to great people and intercultural training.
So I'll move on. We've had a question that's come in here from Bindu, who I think actually used to work in advertising herself. I think she said. She said, "What are the three most?" Actually, I won't force you to have three, but what are the most complex and challenging cultures that you've worked with? Anna, I mean, you've worked in some interesting places. You've worked in Azerbaijan. You've worked in Angola. You've worked in the US, presumably mainly in Texas. And you're originally from Colombia, is that right?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there we have a Colombian working in Angola, which is Portuguese speaking, isn't it? And you've worked in Azerbaijan and you've worked in Texas. So what are the most complex and challenging cultural issues that you've worked with, either personally or with your assignees?
I think at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter which culture you go to and you are kind of facing. I mean, we can definitely have a long debate as to, okay, maybe this one is more challenging than this one and so on. I think at the end of the day, it all goes down to what is your mindset when you're moving countries? What is your mindset when you're going to place yourself and your family in an environment that might be unfamiliar, that is not what you're used to, and where you're going to be spending a considerable amount of time, whether it is 1 year, 6 months, 3 years, or 5. The fact is you're going to be there. So what is going to be your personal attitude, and what is the personal effort that you're willing to put in place to allow you to actually enjoy and integrate that culture? I would like to kind of point out to say, this culture is more difficult or more complex than, because again, I guess it will depend, from where you come from and where you go to find those difficulties. But again, I think my point is, what is your mindset, and what is your disposition to make the best of the experience when you are working in a different culture? So I think, being curious, for one, would be one of my, key elements here, because I think you need to be open-minded and you need to be willing to understand that if you're moving to a certain place that is not your own, you're probably better off being there fully, mentally and emotionally, not only physically. So that would be my reply there.
Yeah, so basically you want curious assignees.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm. I suppose you can read that one of two ways, but I think we've got assignees who are curious. Now, Dean, I mean, you've worked in this area for a very long time. So to Bindu's question, what would you say are the complex and challenging cultures that you've worked with? Have you got particular cases of really complex cultures?
Yeah. Every culture can be more or less complex compared to the individual who is having to work in that culture. That the individual may be more or less familiar with that culture. But I've seen a curious combination of things. Certainly, there are some cultures that are very, very different from my own, or very, very different from the one that the expat is going to. And oftentimes, the fact that the culture may be so different is actually an advantage, because when you're entering a culture that may be very different from one's own, your antennas are already tuned up to the fact that there are differences. If I, as a U.S. American, are suddenly put in China, for example, the differences between U.S. culture and Chinese culture, 80% different, 20% similar. I'm just taking an example. So my antenna are already tuned to the fact that I need to be alert to everything, because I'm entering a culture that is so different from my own.
But if I'm sent on assignment from, say, Detroit to, say, Windsor, Ontario, which I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but it's about 100 miles or something.
Right.
what am I going to find there in terms of intercultural differences?
Well, then you're going to find the opposite. You'll find a situation where it's 80% similar and 20% different. But whether it's 80% similar and 20% different or vice versa, no matter where you are, it's the differences that make the problems. So if it's 80% different or 20% different, you still have to understand what those differences are, which is why sometimes the hardest moves or the most challenging cultures are the ones that seem most similar, because we overlook those 10% of differences that may exist. And in overlooking those or not even being able to perceive them, they're going to trip us up sooner or later. So I think cultures of similarity can be equally or even more challenging than cultures of significant difference. And I've seen expats have different reactions to this. U.S. Americans going to the UK, or people from France going to French Switzerland, or Spaniards going to Hispanic cultures in Latin America. The assumption that the similarities so that we'll have no problems. And in fact, there are still significant differences. So I've seen it work both ways.
What about New York to Texas?
Oh, very different. Very different. The Republic of Texas, I think, is right.
Okay, so I suppose it beggars the question: how important is intercultural adaptability to assignment success? And I'd like to ask this question of the audience, then we'll get into it. I'll give you 4 choices. Okay, how important is intercultural adaptability to assignment success? And you can either say absolutely vital, somewhat important, largely irrelevant, or wholly irrelevant. Okay, so where on that scale is the ability to adapt interculturally? How important is that to assignment success? Kristen, let's start off with you. Where are you on that scale?
Well, I think it's vital, but I don't think it's limited to the expatriate that's going to work in the foreign country. I think it's vital that the whole team who are working together across different cultures adapt to one another, and learn to value the difference of opinion that comes with that. That's what gets us out of our echo chamber, where we're validating our own ideas. And it's vital that people understand how to be inclusive and work with others across cultures.
Okay, I'm seeing those comments coming up in the audience too. I'm saying absolutely vital, absolutely vital, absolutely vital, very, very important, vital. Anna, from your perspective, are you also in the absolutely vital camp?
Yes, I would be, because I think that regardless of whether you're crossing borders or not, I think understanding the culture where you are sitting, where you are operating, becomes critical to your success, both as a professional, as an individual. So I think whether it is just, with the team across the hall, or with it is with actually a whole team of people from a different nationality across the pond, I think it becomes really vital.
Okay, well, we actually asked this in a poll on LinkedIn, I've got the results here. And I suppose it's no great surprise given where we all are and the comments that are coming in from the audience. But 84% said absolutely vital, and a further 10% said somewhat important. So in other words, 94% said it was either important or vital, and then only 5%, 2% said largely irrelevant, and 3% said wholly irrelevant. So 95% said it was really vital. But that, I suppose, raises the question, okay, if intercultural adaptability is so important to assignment success, how do you check it in advance? How do you measure it? How do you know when you're sending somebody on assignment whether it's going to work? And I mean, Anna, you've worked for large organizations like BP. I mean, how do you work out whether someone is going to be able to adapt interculturally? And if not, what do you do about it?
Yes, I think, to be honest with you, Brian, I think that's one of the big gaps that we will see across, I would say, most of the organizations. And that is that, unfortunately, by the time global mobility gets involved in somebody's move, the decision on who the individual is going to be has already been made. And it's not very often that global mobility professionals will get the chance to come in early enough to help the business understand what are the critical points around cultural adaptability and what are the additional elements that will help an assignment become successful apart from the technical expertise of the individual. So yeah, it's interesting to see how in very early conversations that the individual will have with the global mobility team, discussing things, like the housing and the schooling and just, the general terms and conditions for the assignment, you very easily can pick up on certain signals that will give you the indication that that person is either, suitable for that particular environment where they are going, or they are definitely going to have a struggle. And that has been, I think, many of the colleagues on the show today will agree with me that, you let the assignment progress with the person knowing that, you have already detected some of those signs. And then, very shortly down the line, you start seeing all the issues that come along with that person.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the problems that we face as an industry, and actually I'd like to hear the views of the audience too on this, is quite often that we in global mobility don't know that somebody is scheduled to go on assignment until they've been selected to go. So we can't do much by way of intercultural analysis of the person beforehand because they've already made the decision based on all sorts of other issues, functional expertise. I mean, Kristen, in your experience, is that what you find in companies, that the first you hear of a move is when it's already been decided that that's the person that's been selected?
Fortunately, that doesn't happen that often. My role in my current company and in my prior company was both mobility, but also careers, internal careers. And so I would say probably 60% of what I do is identifying that intersection between business needs and personal and professional development needs. So I'm working with people, sometimes even from the point of them starting with the company to map out their career. And, sometimes people are going to grow within their own country, even their own office. Sometimes they're going to be doing something in another market at some point in their time with Brainlabs. And so I don't frequently find out about moves once the person has been offered the role. Not that, sometimes those people aren't successful, but just having a talent mobility person who understands intercultural issues and intercultural agility as part of the selection process and using tools as one variable in selecting someone helps increase the likelihood of, seeing a return on that investment.
And Dean, from your perspective, what should companies do? We've talked about what companies do. What should they actually? What's the best way of dealing with this problem in the real world?
Yeah. I think the degree of assessment prior to actually going is really important. If we can identify the red flags that will stand out and say to us, this person is going to have X number of challenges in X number of areas, then we can start to address those challenges. We can train these individuals. We can help with whatever issues they may be facing before they actually get into the whole stream of becoming an expat, and try to solve whatever problems the red flags show us. So the amount of assessment we can do up front when someone is selected for assignment is really important. And there's lots of different kinds of assessments. There's psychological assessments, there's cultural adaptability assessments, there's all sorts of different kinds of assessments, so that we can get those red flags and try to address them. But
in practice, I mean, do companies actually sit down with a panel of assignees and say, okay, well, there's 5 potential candidates for this transfer, and let's do psychological profile on them and work out which one's going to be best suited? Does that actually happen? I mean, and if not, how do we persuade the line to do it?
Yeah, I think that it does happen. I've worked with clients who do very, very in-depth assessments, but the percentage of them that do that, not very many. And the bottom line is that if you have the functional expertise to be on an assignment, then you're the one who's selected more often than not. And so we have to say, yeah, let's try to do as much assessment as we can up front. But if reality says we're not going to do that, then we need to be able to train individuals to cultural adaptability and cultural competency, get their level of cultural competency up so that because they are the ones chosen to go, that they succeed on that assignment. So we've got to get a return on the investment. They've got to succeed. We've got to measure the success of the assignment. We have to know what is a measure of success. And we have to be able to train people to be able to accomplish that. And that we can do. That we can do.
There's a nice comment that's coming in from Karen Hale. So we'll just pull that up on screen and maybe we can just discuss that for a moment. So Karen says, I'm curious to hear how other companies are encouraging their employees to take cultural training when offered. Historically, it was seen as a nice to do versus a must do, but now it seems to take even more convincing since employees view themselves as very globally connected and savvy. And I suppose that in a way goes back to the story we're talking, the Emily in Paris story we were talking earlier, where you had someone who sort of assumed that they were going to be cultural adaptable, and it didn't work that well. But how do companies encourage people to take cultural training? Any thoughts on that, Anna, Kristen?
I think for once, there is an important connection that I think we probably haven't highlighted enough, which is the connection between cultural adaptability and diversity and inclusion. Very often we hear and we see a lot of effort going on in most organizations these days around, trying to create and promote an inclusive environment where everyone feels that they belong, that they can be themselves, that there is respect, that it's equity. And I think the one element that we seem to have forgotten is the cultural adaptability that goes along with diversity and inclusion. So I think that if we are able to show and bring to the surface that very strong connection between the two, I think that will help the business case.
Also, I want to jump in on that because that's really important, the relationship, the connection between culture and cultural competency and DE&I initiatives. And I think we're moving into this area where it was always seen as a nice to do, but the company never mandated it. Well, I think, though, that we're moving now into an area where mandates and cultural compliance is something that we avoid the whole problem of trying to convince people to take cultural training, because it becomes a mandated or a compliance issue when you look at DE&I. And so, and you can benchmark whether or not someone has actually taken their cultural training or not, and it becomes a mandated issue because of DE&I initiatives. And actually, I think that's the world we're moving into.
It also raises a question about who should do the cultural training. I mean, let's take that Emily in Paris example again, the fictional one this time. Should it be Emily that does the cultural adaptability training, or indeed the people in the Paris office where Emily is going should be doing a bit of cultural adaptability so they know what they're going to be receiving in terms of Emily arriving on their doorstep? Is there a view out there that cultural adaptability training, intercultural training, should actually be for all employees, the locals as well as the assignees, or should it be something where the assignees are the people who are principally the target?
Well, in an ideal world, I think it should be both.
Okay. Yeah. And Kristen, what's your perspective? I mean, you work in that particular Emily world.
Yeah, I mean, we are, again, in my prior role, it was available to everyone in the company, and it was expected that you would use it in various contexts, certainly if you're working with expats, and certainly if you were an expat. But, going back to the point about, is it a must do? It is a must do. And, the onus is on companies, I think, to help people to understand that multiculturalism is no different from, gender, is no different from, ageism issues, is no different from, racial issues, all of the spectrums of diversity, and those things are mandates. So why wouldn't we look at this as well? There's great research that shows, global research that shows the value of multicultural teams. And I think that, if you present the evidence to people and then you have a compelling program, and there are many, many very compelling tools out there, you don't have a barrier because people want to be successful. They want their companies to be successful. And if they understand that this is a way, for teams to, analyze data more accurately, to bring products to market faster, to have stronger track records of innovation, to be more profitable. Those are the things that help people, make the decision to do it and to mandate it if you're in leadership.
Okay. We've got a few minutes left, but I want us to go on to a slightly negative subject, actually, which is, what is the principal cause of assignment failure? Because we're talking about adaptability, and that's one of them. And I'd like to get the audience involved. I'll give you 4 choices, audience, and let me know what you think. You can only choose one, so I'm going to make it hard for you. What's the principal cause of assignment failure? Work performance, i.e. how the assignee is actually doing in their job. And by the way, when I say the word assignee, I mean anybody working overseas. So let's not split hairs in terms of terms. So is it their work performance? Is it their inability to adapt interculturally? Is it an unhappy spouse? And by spouse, I mean partner as well. Or is it simply homesickness? So what would you say in your experience, and start maybe with you, Anna, in your experience working in the organizations you've been in, what has been the principal cause of when assignments have failed?
I would probably go for cultural adaptability, because somehow I feel that a spouse unhappiness kind of falls into that, same as being homesick. Part of the reason for becoming and staying homesick is that you have your mind and your heart back where you left. And you haven't really been able to make the transition to actually be present in this host location. So I think that cultural adaptability probably includes the other two. I'm kind of coming from the assumption that when somebody is selected to go on an expat assignment or on a transfer, there has already been kind of, a review of their competency and their ability to perform well in that new job on that particular team that they are going to be joining. So most of the people, not to say all, are considered to be high performers. So even though we would see some issues with performance throughout assignments, and that's not kind of, absolutely uncommon, I don't think that would be the number one cause for a failure.
Okay, and in fact, we did a LinkedIn poll earlier. I've seen the comments coming in, but what the responses to the LinkedIn poll said was 8% said it, only 8% said it was work performance. So people not actually being able to do the job, which is ironic in a way that we select people, by and large, what we said is based on their functional competence. So we select them for, maybe actually no, it fits in, doesn't it? We select people based on their functional competence, and that shows that when they go there, in most cases, they can do the job. People very rarely fail, or assignments very rarely fail because people can't do the job. But what the audience said is that of the others, 39% said it was some form of intercultural adaptability, and 53% said it was unhappy spouse. Nobody actually said homesickness as the principal cause. And as I think you were saying, Anna, the two come together anyway. Now, we've only got a minute left, and I want to do a very quick, we might go over by a minute, but I want to do a very quick round the table question, okay? Let's assume we can't do intercultural adaptability. We can't do the training, okay? We can't afford the psychological assessment, all that, and we're looking at it. What is the red flag that you're going to see that's going to say, oh, that person is likely to fail when they go abroad? So what's the idiot's guide? Give me 2 or 3 ideas that I can say, if I see that being demonstrated as a behavior, the chances are this assignment is not going to end well. Kristen, do you want to shoot off? Just give me 1 or 2 ideas and we'll quickly go around the table.
Yeah, I think people who are really focused, people who are sort of rigid personality types and really focused on understanding how to replicate their size of their house, amount of money that they have after expenditures, like anyone who's trying to replicate their current life and is really rigid in that way, I tend to find doesn't fare as well. It's a generalization, but
okay, so a rigid personality,
yeah,
is one red flag. Anna, have you got another red flag for us?
Yeah, I'll say that definitely not being open-minded. Not, again, I mentioned the word curiosity. I think not being curious about where they are going and what they might be seeing and finding in that location.
Okay, so rigid and not being open-minded. Dean, one more.
Yeah, I think I would ask them to give me an example of a situation or a condition that would be an absolute dead stop for them in terms of being able to function in that culture. I want to see where they're challenged to either adapt or walk away. And if I hear that, I'll get a pretty good idea of the degree to which their journey toward intercultural
So you're looking for
adaptability.
personal red lines, things that they couldn't do.
Right.
Okay, so that's been an absolutely fascinating discussion. I'm going to bring back onto stage Pat, who I think is with us here somewhere, and Tally, and Julia, I think, has had to go to another meeting.
Yeah.
The team is here. It's been an amazing show. All that really remains is for me to thank the audience. You've been a wonderful, wonderful audience. We will be back next week when we're going to be talking about building a mobility technology strategy. Anna, Kristen, Dean, and as ever, Pat, many, many thanks for being guests on the show. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's certainly been absolutely inspiring hearing what you've all got to say. So thank you all, everybody. Thank you to the audience, and we'll see you again this time next week. Take care and have a great week, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.